The air in the upscale Portland restaurant was thick with the scent of roasted garlic and ambition. Lorene, 34, stepped through the heavy glass doors, her heels clicking softly against the polished hardwood floor. Her mother, Evelyn, had called 2 days earlier, her voice dripping with honeyed promises of a cozy family dinner. Lorene knew better than to trust the warmth in that tone. But a flicker of hope, stubborn, foolish, had pulled her here tonight. She adjusted the strap of her navy dress, a quiet armor she'd chosen carefully, and followed the hostess through the hum of clinking glasses and murmured boasts. The main table gleamed under a chandelier, its white hydrangea centerpiece framed by crisp linen napkins and elegant place cards embossed with gold. But the hostess didn't stop there. She led Lorene past the laughter, past the polished oak, to a small, wobbly side table tucked in a dim corner near the restroom hallway. A single-place setting waited, its paper napkin scrawled with "Lorene" in blue ink. Like an afterthought. No embossed card, no flourish, just her name, scratched out as if it barely mattered. "Is this right?" Lorene asked, her voice steady despite the tightening in her chest. The hostess smiled, all teeth and no warmth. "Yes. Mrs. Carter confirmed this is your seat." Evelyn, her mother, had chosen this. The hostess turned away before Lorene could respond, leaving her to face the truth alone. She lowered herself into the chair, smoothing her dress, already regretting the effort she'd put into coming. Across the room, her older sister, Samantha, sparkled like a department store window. At 38, Samantha was a vision in a tailored emerald blazer. Her laughter too loud, her teeth too white. She waved at someone near the bar, her diamond bracelet catching the light. For a split second, her eyes met Lorene's, then slid away as if she hadn't seen her at all. But Lorene knew better. Samantha always saw her, she just chose not to. The room filled with family, uncles, cousins, aunts, each carrying a polished story of real estate deals, tech startups, or charity galas. The air buzzed with their one-upmanship. A familiar dance of egos Lorene had never been invited to join. She sat, her paper napkin a silent accusation, and tried to blend into the shadows. The server set a breadbasket on her table, and as she reached for a slice, she caught Samantha's voice, sharp and playful, cutting through the chatter. "Oh, we're still waiting on Lorene. Probably haggling over parking fees." Uncle Thomas barked a laugh, and the sound landed like a stone in Lorene's gut. Samantha had a gift for drawing blood with a smile, for making cruelty look like a jest. Lorene made herself small, picking at the shrimp cocktail and goat cheese crostini the server brought next. She sipped her water, kept her eyes down, and breathed through the weight of being invisible. Her cousin, Rachel, leaned over, her fork hovering mid-air. "You working these days, Lorene?" she asked, her tone more curious than kind. "Yeah," Lorene said, keeping it neutral. "Property development." Rachel blinked, unimpressed. "Oh, like leasing apartments or something?" Before Lorene could clarify, Samantha's voice chimed in from 3 chairs away, syrupy and sharp. "She's being modest. Lorene shows the cutest little studios. Perfect for broke college kids." The table chuckled, and Lorene's hands folded tighter in her lap. She didn't correct them, not yet. Dinner passed in a blur of roasted lamb and cloying small talk. The family traded stories of hedge funds, vineyard investments, and coastal retreats. Lorene was a ghost at their feast. Her presence barely acknowledged. She sipped her water, counting the minutes until she could leave without drawing attention. Then came the dessert menu. Samantha leaned forward, her voice carrying like a stage whisper. "We'll skip dessert over here," she said to the server, waving the menu away from Lorene's side of the table. "Budget season, right, sis?" The laughter erupted, loud and jagged. Uncle Thomas slapped the table. Aunt Margaret shook her head with a pitying smile. Even Evelyn, her mother, let a small, embarrassed grin slip through. Lorene stared at the untouched creme brulee across the table, its caramelized crust gleaming under the candlelight. Humiliation filled her, heavy and sour. But she didn't speak. She didn't need to. The room had already spoken for her. She set her fork down, the metal suddenly too heavy. Her eyes burned, But she refused to let them betray her. Not here, not for them. She placed the paper napkin, her makeshift name card, beside her empty plate and murmured to the server. "I'm good. I've had enough." But she wasn't talking about the food. As the family raised their glasses to toast Samantha's latest philanthropic triumph, a donation to some waterfront preservation fund, Lorene pushed her chair back. The soft scrape was swallowed by their chatter. "I'll see you all soon," she said quietly, to no one in particular. No one looked up. Outside, the Portland wind bit at her skin. Lorene walked to her car, her reflection a fleeting shadow in the restaurant's glass doors. No one followed her. No one ever did. Not when they'd already decided she didn't belong. She drove out of the lot. But instead of heading home, she pulled into a 24-hour gas station, its fluorescent lights flickering like a bad dream. She sat there, engine idling, letting the night's weight settle somewhere other than her chest. Her purse held more than her keys. It held receipts. Proof of everything she'd built. Everything her family refused to see. Memories clawed their way up. High school, Samantha's lavish Sweet 16, Lorene in a borrowed dress that didn't zip right. Samantha's voice, clear as yesterday. "She's modest, or just broke." The laughter then, the same as now. But Lorene wasn't that girl anymore. She wasn't broke. She was the one who'd bought the Oregon woodland her mother adored. The one who'd negotiated the deal, paid in full, and arranged for it to be gifted through Samantha at Evelyn's request. Yet at the next gathering, at Samantha's sprawling estate, the deed was presented as a gift, from Samantha, James, and the Carter family. Lorene's name was nowhere on the silver gift tag. She'd stood there, champagne turning to ash in her mouth, as the family applauded Samantha's thoughtfulness. That night, back in her apartment, Lorene kicked off her shoes and sat at her dining table. She unlocked a drawer and pulled out a manila folder labeled Cedar Grove Transfer of Ownership. Her signature was there, crisp and undeniable, alongside payment receipts and wire transfer IDs. "My name was there when it mattered," she whispered to the empty room. She turned on her desk lamp, opened her laptop, and began scanning documents into a backup folder, labeling each with precision. This wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about keeping her story straight. Because stories, told often enough without correction, become truth. And Lorene was done letting her family rewrite hers. Under the soft glow of the lamp, she worked quietly, methodically, like a woman planting seeds in the dark. Let them raise their glasses. Let them erase her from gift tags and table settings. They had no idea what she was preserving. The city hummed outside her window, oblivious to the storm she was preparing to unleash. Lorene wasn't chasing a seat at their table anymore. She was building her own. The Portland skyline shimmered faintly under a bruised, pewter dusk. But inside Lorene's modest apartment, a different kind of light was taking hold. At 34, Lorene had spent years in the shadow of her family's polished narratives. Her contributions buried under their louder, shinier stories. But now, the truth was clawing its way out. And Lorene was no longer content to let it whisper. She sat at her desk, the glow of her laptop casting sharp angles across a manila folder labeled Ashcroft Renewal. The documents inside weren't just paper, they were her voice. Her proof. Her reclamation. Tonight, the city would start to see her. Weeks earlier, Lorene had taken her first bold step. She'd posted 3 slides on her firm's understated social media page. West Wind Properties. Slide 1. A scanned property title. Her name, Lorene Hale, bolded in black ink. Samantha's absent. Slide 2. The original community redevelopment plan. Her signature anchoring the bottom. Slide 3. A time-stamped still from her kitchen security cam, showing her shaping strawberry tarragon scones. The same ones Samantha had claimed on local TV as her own. The caption was simple: "Legacy is built, not borrowed." She didn't check the likes or shares. She didn't need to. Within hours, a message pinged from an old contact on the city planning board. "Saw your post. About time someone cleared the air." By morning, the slides had spread, reposted by local nonprofits and community blogs. Each tag a crack in the facade Samantha had built. The ripple effect was swift and merciless. Samantha's carefully curated image, philanthropist, visionary, Portland's golden daughter, began to fray. Donors who once fawned over her waterfront galas started pulling back. A prominent foundation issued a quiet statement about re-evaluating public alignment with community values. Another thanked her for past partnership and moved on. Samantha's social media, usually a cascade of filtered brunch photos and charity smiles, went silent. Evelyn, Loreen's mother, resigned from the community board she'd shared for a decade, slipping away with a formal notice and no fanfare. Someone forwarded it to Loreen with a note. "Thought you'd want to see this." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. The silence wasn't shame, it was surrender. Loreen didn't gloat. Instead, she poured her energy into something real. On a chilly Saturday, she reopened a tiny storefront in a nondescript East Portland strip mall. A space she'd leased years ago for a pop-up event. It was where she'd first tested her scones for community distribution, long before Samantha claimed them. Now, it became the heart of a one-day charity bake sale. No banners, no PR agents, just folding tables, handwritten signs, and the warm scent of vanilla and brown butter. Prices were whatever people could afford, with every cent going to a tenant protection fund Samantha had once bragged about, spearheading. The first hour was quiet. Just a few curious neighbors. Then a trickle became a stream. A little girl, no older than 8, clutched a scone with both hands and looked up at Loreen. "These taste like the ones on TV," she said, eyes wide. Loreen crouched down, smiling. "They are. You just never saw who baked them." A soft round of claps rose from the small crowd. A man slipped a 20 into the donation jar without taking change. It wasn't a spectacle, but it was a beginning. The tide kept turning. A message arrived from one of Samantha's key donors. "Would love to meet the actual developer behind Ashcroft." "Let's talk." Loreen flagged it, unopened, letting it sit like a chess piece she'd move when the moment was right. Timing, she'd learned, was everything. Then came an envelope, hand-delivered, no return address, just her name on cream cardstock, Samantha's style. Always more polished than sincere. Inside was an invitation to the Ashcroft renewal ribbon-cutting ceremony. Officially, Loreen wasn't on the program. Unofficially, they'd lost control of the narrative. The event unfolded in front of a freshly painted community center. Its sidewalk swept clean, flowers blooming in neat rows. Rows of chairs faced a small stage. A banner proclaiming "Building Portland Together." Loreen arrived 10 minutes early, dressed in dark gray slacks and a tucked-in blouse. No jewelry. She didn't need flash to be seen. Samantha took the stage in a pearl-colored suit. Her smile tighter than usual. Her makeup flawless but her eyes darting. Flashbulbs popped as she began. "This project is more than redevelopment," she said, voice smooth as glass. "It's about lifting up places like Alder Street." A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. Alder Street, where Loreen lived. Where she'd invested. Where she'd built when no one else would. Samantha's words were a jab, painting the area as a charity case, not a triumph. Loreen didn't flinch. Then the air shifted. A man in a navy vest, a local nonprofit director, leaned toward a reporter, handing over a single page. The journalist's eyes widened as he scanned it. The equity breakdown for Ashcroft renewal. Line 1. West Wind Holdings, 76%. Line 2. LLC owner. L. Hale. No mention of Samantha. The reporter whispered to his cameraman, who adjusted his lens. Samantha, oblivious, kept speaking about preserving community identity. But the applause that followed was uneven. Hesitant. "Samantha," the reporter called out, "can you clarify the role of West Wind Holdings?" Her jaw twitched, her smile faltering. "We've always collaborated with aligned firms," she said, blinking too fast. "Was your sister one of them?" the reporter pressed. Samantha's head tilted, her voice warm but strained. "She's always been supportive in her own way." The crowd stirred, sensing the fault line. Loreen didn't rush to the stage. She walked to the nonprofit director, shook his hand, and agreed to talk. Under a canopy, away from the crowd, a young blogger with a homemade press badge recorded her story. Loreen spoke calmly, laying out the timeline: permits, Filings, partnerships, all hers. I didn't need to be the face. She said, her voice clear. I just wanted to protect the foundation. When asked if she felt betrayed, she paused. I used to think truth would rise on its own. Sometimes you have to put it on paper and hand it to someone. A city housing staffer nearby nodded. Smart play, she said later, letting her say it first. People don't forget who tried to steal what wasn't theirs. The article dropped that night. Meet the quiet developer behind Portland's most talked about renewal project. Loreen didn't share it. Others did. Dozens. Then hundreds. Reposts piling up with comments from strangers and old acquaintances alike. She's the one who saved my cousin's lease. I saw her with the survey crew last spring. She doesn't brag. She builds. Samantha wanted the spotlight, but Loreen had built the foundation. And foundations carry the weight. Days later, Loreen arrived at a glass-walled boardroom downtown. Invited by the Ashcroft Renewal Advisory Committee. The email's subject line was clinical. Contributor clarification. She wore a simple blazer. Her leather folder tucked under her arm. Samantha sat at one end of the table, flanked by donors and a PR rep. Evelyn, in a navy blouse Loreen recognized from years ago, sat further down, her face unreadable. No one stood when Loreen entered. She took the seat across from Samantha, placed her folder on the table, and waited. The chairwoman began. We're reviewing the authorship of a recent publication tied to Ashcroft. Samantha folded her hands, voice steady. It's a misunderstanding. Loreen slid out a document. Her movements deliberate. The misunderstanding was printed in Portland Weekly under Samantha Carter's byline. She said, passing around two papers, her original grant proposal draft, stamped with the Library of Congress copyright, and the glossy feature with Samantha's smiling face. The room stilled. A board member coughed. Samantha opened her mouth. But Loreen continued, calm and precise. This isn't about inspiration. It's about theft, of authorship, of narrative, of identity. Evelyn spoke softly. Loreen, maybe this isn't the... Loreen cut her off. Her voice low but firm. This is exactly the place. Because every other table, you told me it wasn't. She pulled out the final document, the redevelopment contract. Land title, banking logs, all tied to her. This isn't a request for credit, she said, placing it at the table's center. It's a return to accuracy. Samantha leaned back, face unreadable. Evelyn stared at the folder but didn't touch it. A young donor asked, is this the same property in our annual report? Loreen nodded. The numbers check out. I suggest your legal team confirm what your PR team missed. A city planner held up a zoning request. El Hale. March 2020. Whispers spread. Samantha tried. We've always shared family projects. Loreen's gaze was steady. Then why was I never in the credits? Why did my draft end up with your name? Published after I declined your housing bill? No answer. Loreen stood. Her voice even. You have the truth now. What you do next reflects your integrity. Not mine. She looked at Evelyn. I was told not to embarrass this family. But I'm not the one who divided us. She nodded, slid her folder into her tote, and walked out. No one stopped her. The weeks that followed were quiet. Not with shame but with resolution. Loreen hosted a gathering in the alley behind her Alder Street complex. Folding chairs, space heaters, a camp stove bubbling with hot cocoa. Kids ran with cider cups. Tamales passed in foil, soul music humming low. A girl tugged Loreen's sleeve. Is this your house? Loreen crouched. No, it's ours. I just held the door open. The girl ran off, and the small crowd nodded, their acceptance louder than applause. One evening, a soft knock came. Evelyn stood on Loreen's porch, holding a bakery tote Loreen had sewn for her years ago. No lipstick, hair pulled back. I didn't plan what to say. Evelyn murmured. Then don't, Loreen said, stepping aside. They sat on her couch. The tote between them, cinnamon and clove faint in the air. 15 minutes passed in silence. Finally, Evelyn spoke. You've always been steadier than I gave you credit for. Loreen nodded. You never had to say it. It wasn't an apology. But for Evelyn, it was a start. Loreen's inbox filled with messages from nonprofits, planners, people who got her name right. she answered, not with triumph, but with purpose. She opened a blank document. Not for a speech, but a blueprint. A community fund for women like Ms. Daniels in 2B. For moms like Kira finishing night school. For the girl who didn't need to know who owned the building. She typed her name at the bottom, Laureen Hale, not bolded. Just present. Legacy wasn't recognition. It was resilience. The quiet power of building something no one could erase.